Hello, welcome to another tutorial in the Getting Started series. In this series, we are going to talk about a few things, some of the basic building blocks of Lesscode. We are going to talk about how to select elements. We are going to first talk about how to add those elements, how to select those elements, what are applied nodes and what are available nodes, and what the nodes are actually. Once you get the basics of this, building websites with Lesscode is going to be a breeze. So we are going to start by looking at our interface. Now where we look at our design interface, what we can see is that when we hover our mouse over the interface, we can see there's something there, and that's a red dotted thing that comes around. Now Lesscode has a few elements and it's organized in particular ways. Now when I hover my mouse over this, you can see it's selected, it turns orange. Now when I click on it, this, it should select it, but in some cases it doesn't. So basically when it doesn't, you need to add, especially when the page is fresh like this, you probably need to add your own section and then you create it. Let's talk about sections and some of the create tools here. Now a section is like a container that contains every kind of idea of a website. We would like a section for you to be a section of your website's page that has an idea. You get me? So organize your pages into sections so that you can take those sections, save them, and then you'll be able to apply them later. For example, if you go to the right and you see our asset library, this is a section. So as you can see, we have section styles. This is a section. So I created a section as a representation of an idea I want in my page, and I saved it so that I can apply it on other websites, and we are going to apply it for you to take a look at how it's going to look. Now a section is a container, and inside the section is what you put every other thing that you need. So for example, let's add a section, and to add a section to any page, you just click this add section button. So now we've added a section to this page. I'm going to select the section by clicking on it, and once I click on it, you see this bounding box actually appears around it with these round circles. Make sure that anytime you click an element, the bounding box appears. Sometimes you might click an element and it's going to take a while to appear because maybe your internet connection is low or it might not work. And if in the case, as you saw, there was the issue of me, especially when the page is fresh, when I clicked on that element, it didn't actually work. I needed to add a new section onto it for me because that section had been there. In other instances it will work, but basically now the settings of this section is not that important. Now as you can see, the first section that was generated by the application when we created the page is the first is what I've selected now, but I want to delete it, and to delete it I press delete on my keyboard and I delete it because I really don't want to use that section. We'll go into details why I deleted that section. I want to start afresh, and by doing that I created my own section. Now there are a few actions that you can do with any section. You can add a block, you can add an image, you can add a shape, a button, text, and sound, and you can add form elements. Now this section is too short, so I'm just going to click on this to drag it and make sure that it's settled properly. So let's click on this and I'm going to drag it down. As you can see, I stretched it down, and I'm going to press Ctrl S to save. Now these things are getting real now, so I've stretched this section. And as I said, sections represent an idea that you want to have on your page, right? So you group your pages into sections. So maybe the first section is talking about an idea, maybe the header, as we call it in web design, the hero part of the website, the hero section of your website. That is the first thing people see when they come. It could have your navigation, it could have your logo and a few text, a video background, text background, whatever it is that you want to have, you can have it there. Now sections can also have buttons, images, blocks. Now I'm going to add a few of these elements into this section. Now I'm going to add an image. So as you can see, an image has been added for me. So I click on the image and drag it aside. Now I'm going to click on the section again, and I'm going to add a text element into that section. When I put that text element, I'm just going to put it aside. Now inside the element, I'm going to add another block here. Now blocks are basically like sections, blocks are containers, and in this case let's explain blocks this way. Blocks are sort of containers that you can have elements in. So for example, I have a text and an image. I want to group them together. I can group them together in this block so that it becomes easy for me to deal with, and to do that is very simple. So let me just demonstrate what blocks actually do so that you can get the whole concept well. So when I click on a block right now, I press Ctrl and I click on the elements I want to add to the block. You see that the yellow marking comes around the particular element. I click another element, and as you can see, the yellow markings come. Make sure anytime you click, the bounding box appears before you go and click another thing. Is very important, or else you are going to have your elements mess up and it's going to cause issues for you. So then the last thing I need to click is the block that I want to group these elements in. So I click on that one and I press Ctrl G to group. So this is basically what a block does for you, right? So now that I'm done selecting, let me just select this image and then select the block back. As you can see what I'm doing, I'm just stretching these things like to get the kind of shape I want, whatever it is, and then I move it to the left. Okay, so basically we've added elements into this section. Now I want to talk a little bit about notes, what notes are and how you are going to be building or changing, editing your website. Now you see, notes are basically properties of all these elements that we are going to build. We all agree that building websites involves adding images, text, audio, whatever it is to make the website look the way you want it to look. And in this case, what I would probably do is, for example, pick any website as an example, but I would just use our own website as an example. Now when you go into this website, we have a few other things that we can look at. We have our logo, our navigation and all that stuff. So we have different sections here. As you can see, with off the top of my head, you can see that we have different sections, and these sections are characterized by sort of having text. You see, these are text elements that we've arranged here, like these images and all that. And all this was built in Lesscode without writing a single line of code. So I'm going to show you just how to do that. Now let's go to our full screen. It's much better this way. No distractions. So in this particular case, we are talking about notes. Notes are properties of these elements, and applied notes and available notes, they are just names we give to the note that have been applied to this element to give it the properties it has and make it look the way it does, are what we call applied notes, because they have already been applied to this element. And when you select any element, the properties or applied notes actually show up. So let's go to applied notes, and that is the first icon here. You can see applied notes. All these notes have been added, and if you're a web developer, a programmer already, you know what these notes are basically. And if you are not, it doesn't really matter. You are going to get to use them anyway to build awesome websites. You don't really need to know what they actually do. And we are going to, and by the way, we have a node reference and a very detailed node reference that shows you all the available nodes and what it does and how to apply them, what you can use them for. Is there. If you have time, you can go through, but if you don't, you can just go ahead and then add these things. Now these are applied nodes. Now I want to show you something. All our available nodes are here. As you can see, search for nodes. So we are going to search for a node. Now we have our node here. Let's say, for example, I have an element. As I told you, nodes give elements the properties they have. They make the elements look the way they actually look. So for example, this block has a node background here. This block that we selected here has a node called background, and that determines the background color of that particular node. So if I come here and I change it, you can see the background color of this particular block is changing. Now if, for example, I had wanted, if it didn't have that background color and I wanted to add to it, all I have to go into search for the nodes, double click this, and actually changes it as a background color. And each of these nodes have a default setting, and when you add a background color to any element, right, it has a default setting of having a white background color. So sometimes for me it's a shortcut to make my sections or elements have a white background instead of just going to the background, going here to edit it and change it. It's quite cumbersome. So I just double click this, and as you can see, adds the node to the element I've selected. So far I hope I've not lost you. This is the basics of building websites with Lesscode. So basically we've added quite a few nodes. So each of these elements, as I click on them, have certain nodes that make the element look, behave, and behave the way they do. So for example, let me select this text. As you can see, this text is faint on a white background, and what you would want to do is just change that background, the text color, change the font size, font family, whatever it is that you want to do. So first we are going to change the text color, make it black. Okay, and we are going to have to make the font size, increase the font size a bit, right? And let's say we want to change the font family. We are going to look for a text, or we can search for any of these fonts here, and we're going to just change the font color, all from the notes section, because as I've told you, the notes give these properties and you can have them here and you can change them to whatever you want. And one of the things that we were discussing right now was the fact that if you want to add a node to give a certain property to any of the elements, you could just search here. So there's a text, I want the text to have a background. So what do? I go and search for background color, double click it, and it actually shows up in here. And I can change the color to something else so that we see the difference between that and the rest of the page. So I've changed the color to that. I can click anywhere outside here by clicking here or here outside this element and press Ctrl S to save. Now I have this selected, and one of the reasons why we actually grouped these elements was to have them move as a block together like this, okay, so that it becomes easier for us to move them together. So as you can see, we have this now, and basically this video is kind of stringing along, so we would want to end here. So in this video we've learned quite a few things. These are the basic building blocks of Lesscode. We've learned about the elements, how to add all these elements to create your website. So for example, you have a look in mind, and we are going to go step by step. We are going to learn how to use all these things. And you want to add an image, you can easily add that image. You can add a text, add whatever it is you want. You can drag it all around the page to place it where you want it to be. And each of these elements, we've learned that they have properties called nodes. And then when you add the node to these elements, it makes the element behave and look the way they do. So we've applied some of the nodes here, and the difference between applied nodes and available nodes are just simple. Available nodes are all the nodes you can use in Lesscode. Applied nodes are the nodes already applied to the elements that you have selected. Basically that is it. And once you have gotten this, in the next videos we are going to build upon this, and you are going to build awesome things with this website. To end this video though, I want to talk about a few things. As you can see, when I click on this, it takes a while for this bounding box to come. With this bounding box appearing, you can drag this, you can rotate it, whatever it is that you want to do. Okay, you can do all that. You can extend it, okay, and you can increase the height, you can increase whatever it is that you want to do. You can drag it around. Make sure that when you, so for example, so once you have selected this element, you can make changes to it, and when you click on the next element, it saves the changes that you have made to this element and loads the settings or the properties or nodes of this element. It's very important. That is why anytime you click on an element, like let's say clicking on a section like this, you need to wait for these things to show up. When they show up and there's a blue outline around it, then you know it actually tells you that it's saved your previous editings on the previous elements you selected, and it has loaded these elements. if you don't wait for it to show and you keep clicking other things, this is what will happen. The settings for each of the elements will mess up and your page is going to look very hideous. Okay, so basically I hope that's very clear. Okay, so what someone asks, what if I'm working on something and this is the last thing I worked on? What do? You just press Ctrl S to save, and you can save this here. So you see, when I click on any other thing, the saved text comes. That means that saved the previous thing I worked on. So basically that's what you need to keep in mind. Once you follow these rules and the things that I've told you, basically you are good to go. In the next video we are going to look more at working on each of these things separately, working on text, working on images. We are going to take them one by one and then we are going to place them on the page. Thank you for watching.